That's what he said. We're basically looking at cultural beliefs of what people think that God actually said, but in reality, God never said that. That's not what he said. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works, right? Today we're going to look at one of the biggest misbeliefs about God. It's been said by many. I first heard a preacher say it, but it's been said you're either coming out of a storm, going into a storm, or living through a storm pretty much your entire life. You're either in the middle of a storm right now, or you've just come out of a storm, or you're about to go into another storm in your life, and I know that's encouraging to you. Welcome to church. We're glad you came. But that seems like that's what life is like a lot of times. It's just storm after storm after storm. And life seems to, if you think about it, that's the truth, and it seems to be kind of complicated, kind of quick a lot of times. Sometimes things can be real sunny, and all of a sudden it gets very stormy real fast. A lot of times when that happens, it often seems like in my life, I don't know about your life, it seems like when life is giving me more than I seem to be able to handle. I don't know if you've ever been there. Some of you may be there right now, but it seems like to me, you get to a place where you're financially, it just seems like it's too much. Physically, I can't handle one more bad report. I can't handle one more bad thing. Relationally, everything's just going to garbage. I'm like, come on, can I get along with somebody? Can't we just all get along? Mentally, I'm going through things. The weight of the world seems to be weighing in on my brain, on my mind, and it seems to get heavier day after day after day after day. And you get to a point where some of you will say, and I've said, and we've all maybe said it, I just can't take this anymore. I can't take any more. I can't take any more. There's just not one more thing. I can't handle one more thing. And then usually in my life, this is what usually happens. Some Christian comes by, a well-meaning Christian will come by, and they know, and here's what happens. They come away with some annoying Christian advice. You know who I'm talking about. Don't point at them. Maybe they're not here this morning, but they have this annoying Christian advice with a smile on their face. Well, brother, don't worry. Brother, don't fret. Don't worry. You need to remember that God will never give you more than you can handle. Has anybody ever told you that? Have you ever been told that? Have you ever told someone that? Brother, don't worry. Have peace in the midst of the storm because God will never give you more than you can handle. Bless God. Somebody get on the organ, God will never give you more than you can handle. It's going to be okay because God will never give you more than you can handle. And here's the truth. God never said that. God never said that at all. And I think what happens is people misunderstand 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, where Paul is talking to the Corinthians and he's telling them about temptation. And he says this, God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out from that temptation. It never says God will not let you endure more than you can handle. It simply says he will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. In fact, when you read the Bible, you see story after story after story of people who often have more than they can handle, given to them by God. I was telling them at breakfast this morning, every ministry I've ever been a part of, every time I step out into faith, I get to a place where it's more than I can handle. Every time I've ever been called by God to do something, I get to this, I was like, God, are you sure? I can't do this. I'm okay with this, but what is this over here? I can't handle this. It's beyond my control. And every time I look in the Bible, there's story after story like that. If you look in Judges, Gideon himself, he's called to be the judge, be the leader. And he says his return to God is, I am the weakest of my clan. I am the least of my fam. I'm the least of all of it. I'm the weakest. Are you serious? I don't have what it takes. Are you sure you're calling the right person? Because I can't do what you've called me to do. You look at Moses and he says, I'm calling you to go and lead the children of Israel. He says, listen, God, I'm slow of speech. I'm not a good speaker. I'm not a good leader. And then he goes and he does, and he gets the people, and they're following him. He said, God, these people are wearing me out. They're driving me crazy. They're on my last level. They've got me to the nth degree. I'm going crazy. I can't do this. I don't have what it takes. Queen Esther, you read about it, she says, listen, I'm very, very afraid of what you've called me to do. I don't know if I'm the right person for this job. King David said this in Psalm 38, verse 4. He says, my guilt has overwhelmed me like a burden too heavy to bear. Then if you skip down to verse 8, he says, I'm exhausted and completely crushed. My groans come from an anguished heart. A man after God's own heart, called by God to do and to be and to do whatever he would call him to do. He says, I'm overwhelmed by this. I'm burdened by this. I'm anguished. I have groans. My heart is anguished. I don't have what it takes. This is too much to bear, God. And if you don't like any of those examples, how about Jesus himself when he writes, when it's written of him in Mark, the Gospel of Mark says, Jesus began to deeply be distressed and troubled. And he says this, my soul is overwhelmed and sorrowed to the point of death. Jesus himself said, I am overwhelmed to the point of death. I'm sweating drops of blood here, Dad. I'm overwhelmed to the point of death. If there's anybody else could take this cup from me, I don't know if I can handle it. This seems like too much to bear. So God never, ever said, I will not give you more than you can handle. In fact, for those of you who feel the weight of the world pressing down on you right now, I want to show you this morning that God will actually allow you to live in more than you can handle. And he does it for specific reasons. You were saying, well, why would God allow me to have more than I can handle? I would say the first reason he would do that is so you will learn how to depend upon his presence in your life. Why is he going to give me more than I can handle? So you'll learn how to depend on his presence. There are times when he wants to teach us to depend on his presence, to lean in onto him and lean into him. He wants to teach us to depend on him and not on ourselves. How many of you have ever noticed that when things are going good in your life, when the finances are good and the relationships are good and your health is good and the sun is shining and the birds are chirping, you don't usually call out to God? Ding. Even the phone agrees. Survey says, ding, number one answer. Yes. All these things are going great. I'm having a good time. And it actually seems where you get it kind of easy to forget about God and your need for God. And if we're honest, when life's going like that and everything's going like we want to, we're like, God, I know you're still there, and I know that I kind of need you, but right now I kind of got this. Right now I've got everything under control, and I'll get to you later, but right now I'm doing okay. But you let something urgent happen in your life because everything's going well, and all of a sudden everything begins to go south. All of a sudden you remember God. You're like, well, I need you, Jesus, to come to my rescue. Where else can I go? What a good song that I just butchered. But you're like, come on, God, I need you. Where you been? Here's your boy over here. Can you not help your boy out? And God's like, bro, I've been here the whole time. You didn't need me yesterday when everything was sunny and everything was going good, but now you've done messed up and everything's gone south. And hey, now you're calling me. We call out to him when we get in trouble, and people, we're looking at God and we're thinking, where are you at? I remember when COVID hit, man, and COVID hit, 2020 hit, and everybody's like, man, where's God? I'm looking for him anywhere, and I'm looking for him everywhere. I need God. It's the end of the world as we know it, and I don't feel fine. I'm going crazy here. I need some help. And then here we are on the other side of that, and not so much. I don't really need God. I'm good. I got this. I'm okay. To the next pandemic, I'll be all right. But let something happen. Let the economy crash. Oh, God, where are you? Let you get a bad report from the hospital or from the doctor. Oh, God, I need you. I need you. Where are you? Your kid loses their mind. That's just being a teenager, to be honest. But you're like, oh, God, I need your help. I've got 2 teenagers. I got 3 teenagers. My family, my dad, mom had 3 teenagers in the house at the same time, 13, 16, and 19. Oh, my God, I need you. It's amazing when life gets difficult, you're suddenly drawn to God. Oh, God, I need you. And then you begin to ask, well, why would he allow me to go through this? Why would he allow more to put this on me? It's more than I can handle. And I believe, honestly, ladies and gentlemen, he's teaching you how to depend upon his presence. You can see the reality of this in the Old Testament. One of the more popular stories, especially in children's church, of Jonah. God comes to Jonah and he tells him, listen, I need you to go and to preach to the Ninevites. And Jonah's like, nah, man, I don't like them guys. I'm not going there, God. I'll go anywhere, but I'm not going to Nineveh. I'm not feeling that one, God. I don't like them, and they don't like me, and I'm not doing it. So he started to rebel, and he said, I'm going to go do my own thing. And much like maybe you in this room or those who are watching online or will watch online, you say, I'm just going to go do my own thing, and I'll figure it out on my own. And in Jonah's life and in his story, at the end of this rebellion, his life begins to spiral downward. Much like many of us in this room have probably experienced that. We go out in rebellion and our life begins to spiral downward. Much like maybe you're experiencing right now, you're not walking with God where you need to be and how you should be, and your life is spiraling down and you're saying, where are you, God? Well, in Jonah's case, he actually spiraled downward. He spiraled downward off a boat and down into the belly of a big fish. It got really out of control really fast. It says this, here's Jonah riding from the belly of the big fish, the whale. In my distress. Notice he says, in my distress, not in my success. In my distress, I have called to you, Lord. And he answered me, and when my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to you. Nothing like getting your attention by being in the belly of a whale, wanting to try to call to God. Hey, God, you got my attention. What do you need? In my distress, I cried out to God. People will get in the midst of storms, and they'll start to wonder about God, and they'll say, where are you, God, in the midst of all the storms? Life isn't going the way that I thought it was supposed to go. Life isn't going the way that it should, so God, what's happening? If God, if you were really God, you wouldn't let this happen in my life. God, if you were really God, you wouldn't allow this. And if God, I've prayed for this one thing to go away, and it's still here, God, so I don't understand why you're allowing this to happen in my life. I'm asking for this, and you're giving me the opposite. God, where are you? What are you doing? God, if you were so good, you wouldn't let this happen. If you were so good and you were so powerful, you would stop this right now. And what you need to understand, what we need to understand, what the body of Christ needs to understand is we can never let the presence of a storm cause us to doubt the presence of God. Just because you're in a storm doesn't mean that God is not there, because the Bible tells us, all of us should know this, but if you don't, let me remind you that God will never leave you nor forsake you. He is always with you. Even to the end, he says. Never let the presence of a storm cause you to doubt the presence of God. Because every now and then the winds will blow, the waves will crash. But don't let the presence of the wind and the waves cause you to question the presence of God. He's still there. He'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you. Why, God, though? Why would you allow me to experience this thing? Why would you allow me to experience this more than I can handle? I've told you first, sometimes it's to teach you to depend on God. I would also say probably because sometimes it's to teach you how to call out to God, to scream out to Him, to cry out to God. David said this about a calling out to God in Psalm 145. He said, the Lord is near to all who call on Him, to all who call to Him in truth. The Lord is near to all who call. He says, I'm just a call away. If you'll just call me, I'll draw near. If you just mention my name, I'll draw near. As long as you're mentioning it out in truth. Now, there are a lot of people that mention the name of God, but they put a last name on it. He's not calling, He's not drawing near to that. But He says, if you'll call my name and call it out in truth, I will be near to you. The Lord is near to those. Some of you you're here today. Some of you maybe watch today. Maybe you'll watch later this week, and you'll say, listen, I'm in the midst of a storm. I understand the presence of a storm because that's where I'm at. And when you get to that place, I pray that you'll remember that you have to call on the Lord. You have to seek the Lord in the midst of all of that. You have to seek Him. And if you seek Him, I will promise you, He will reveal Himself to you. He does time and time again, over and over and over. He reveals Himself to you. When you draw near to Him, He draws near to you. He's just looking for the invitation to say, I'm drawing near, I'm coming to you. So never let the presence of that storm cause you to doubt the presence of God Almighty. But why would God allow this? Why would God help me how would he let me experience this thing that I can't handle? Sometimes it's to get you to draw into his presence. Sometimes it's to get you to call out to him. Sometimes it's to remember his goodness, to lure you into calling out on his name. Listen, life's like that. A lot of times, one moment you're on the mountain, and it seems like the very next moment you're walking through the valley. And you're like, God, I wanted to be on the mountain, but here I am in the valley. And ladies and gentlemen, I understand this. You can experience God on the mountain. I've experienced him on the mountain. But for me, it's the valley is where I've learned to trust God more. It's the valley where I'm more aware of my need for him. It's in the valley that when I walk through the valley, the shadow of death, that I will fear no evil. Why? Because I know that he is with me, that he's not forsaken me. He's with me through the middle of all of that. He's there with me going through that valley. I don't have to worry about that. I know he's with me. He's in the presence in the valley. It's in the valley that I learned these things. It's in the valley where I best experience his presence. It's in that valley when I'm most aware of his goodness. And to be honest, I would rather be in the valley with Jesus than on the mountain without Jesus. I'd rather walk through the valley of the shadow of death knowing Jesus is hand in hand with me than be on top of the mountain saying, well, now where are you? I'd rather go through that. I'd rather struggle with his presence, rather struggle with his goodness than be on the mountaintop and be unaware of who he even is. I'd like to know where he's at. I want to know. I don't know who needs to hear this, but maybe you're here this morning, you're hurting right now. Can I remind you that you're not alone? God has never left you, and he's never going to let a presence of a storm squash his presence there in your life. You've got to call to him. You've got to look for him. You've got to be there and ready to receive him. Many of you will still say, well, why would God still do this? Why does he allow me to do these things? Why does he give me more than I can handle? Maybe it's to teach you to depend upon his presence. That he'll never leave you. That he'll never forsake you. Maybe it's to teach you another lesson. Maybe it's not just his presence he wants to provide for you. Maybe he wants to teach you how to experience his power. Maybe he wants to teach you how to experience his power. To experience his supernatural power. We used to sing about his wonder-working power. Remember that? To experience that power in your life. Because let's be honest, too many people are trying to do this life on their own. Too many people are trying to do this thing on their own strength, and their own will, and their own might, trying to figure this thing out. So we have to experience his power. I remember growing up, and when I grew up was a little bit different than when you young people grew up. Number one, we didn't wear seat belts because many of our cars didn't have seat belts. Our cars had these long bench seats. The front seat was long and the back seat was long. And one of the cooler things was you had the back window and you had a little ledge up there. And if your younger brother was little and skinny enough like mine was, he could lay up in there. Or cool things, you could take your Matchbox cars and put them up there, and if your dad was fast enough, he'd turn and they'd go from one side to the other, and you just have a good old time. At our house, when we went on road trips, we had a triple decker bunk beds. I got the seat because I'm the oldest and the biggest and the brightest and the smartest and the best looking. If you're watching, brother, thank you, welcome. Middle brother, he would get the bottom. For some reason, he'd only get down the bottom, and then we had the hump, because you had the drivetrain would go through the middle and had the hump there. He'd just do that, and then my little brother would climb up in the top. We had triple bunk beds. But it never failed. Every time we'd go on road trips, my dad would have to give us something to do because we would kill each other if he didn't. Because, this is my side, that's your side, don't get on my side. He touched me, he's on my side, don't touch me, he's looking at me. Hey, let's play a game. Mainly, we would go on road trips at least a couple times a month to my grandparents' house who lived in Newton, which to me it seemed like an eternity to drive, but now it's not a big, long drive at all. For some reason, we went to Country Way. We would get off and we would go up through, we lived in Ranlow. We'd go up through Dallas. We'd cut past through Lincoln and go up through Maiden, and we'd get to Newton, and my dad just loved that way. We'd be like, Dad, what can we do? So our favorite game of all time was counting cows. We counted cows. So if you're on the right side of the car, you count the cows that you pass on the right side. If you're on the left side of the car, you pass the cows that are on the left side. And if you pass a church with a cemetery, all your cows die. You get up by 300 cows, and all of a sudden you pass First Baptist of Maiden, all your cows are dead. I'm winning over here. For me, I'm the middle kid. I'm in the middle. I'm like, I get all the cows. Any cow I can see, I get to count it. And there's no cemeteries in the middle of the road, so I always won. For some reason, my dad had decided that he was going to do something different this time, and he handed us all a bandana. He said, here's what we're going to do today, guys. We're going to drive to Grandma and Grandpa's house. Roll your windows down. I bet you can't hold on to this bandana the whole time we're riding down the road. All you had to say was, I bet you can't. I'm going to say, I'll show you, I bet I can. So it literally was a winter morning one time we did this. We're rolling the windows down. My mom's up there, Ray, it's cold. Why would you have the boys roll the window down? I said, well, we got to keep them entertained or they're going to kill each other. So we all have a bandana. We're holding it out the window. Trey and Jason's over here on this side, and I'm over on this side because I'm the oldest and I'm the smartest and I'm the brightest and the best looking, and I get my side. I'm holding my bandana. They're holding the bandana. We're like, hey, I got this. You're going to lose. You're the loser. I'm going to win. 32 degrees outside. Wind's blowing. Our hands are freezing. Around every curve, up and down every hill. I got this. I'm holding on. I'm holding on. I got this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to hold on to this. Dad probably should have rolled the windows up and sort of said, hey, guys, this is not safe. Hope DSS is not listening. But I'm going to hold on to this no matter what. I'm not going to let go of this thing. It was crazy cold. Windows were down. My hands are freezing. But no matter what, I'm not going to let go of this thing. No matter what, I've got the power. I've got the strength. I can handle this. I'm going to do this. Hold on to that banner for life. Listen, here's the problem. A lot of us in this room, we're trying to do that with what God's given. Maybe what God's allowed in your life. Not God giving you, but there's something that's come into your life. That God's allowed it to be there, so maybe you can call out to Him. Maybe you can experience His presence. Maybe you can learn how to experience His power. But instead of experiencing His power, you're experiencing your own power trying to hold on to that thing, no matter what. And the world's telling you, I bet you can't handle this. And you say, well, I bet I can. I'll hold on to this. I've got the power. I've got the strength. I've got everything I need to do this. I'm going to hold on to this no matter what. On my own, I can do this. I've got this. All because, remember, God will never give me more than I can handle. I'm going to hold on to this thing. Listen, here's the deal. If He won't give you more than you can handle, then you've convinced yourself that you can hold on, that you do have the strength, that you do have the power. And here's the real deal, guys, ladies and gentlemen. That's not the truth at all. That's not the truth at all. That's simply not true, because you were not created to have the power to do it on your own. That's not how God created you. He did not create you with the power to handle the things that happen in your life and come to you in your life. You were created with a need inside of you for God. I told you last week, you were created with a God-sized hole in your life, and everything you try to stuff in your life, boyfriends and girlfriends and drugs and alcohol and relationships and music and career after career after career and hobby after hobby after hobby after hobby and diet after diet and workout after workout, you come up empty still. Because those things are not God-shaped. They're the things that this world has to offer. And those things are all good and on their own, and there's nothing wrong with those things except for the drugs and alcohol. Relationships are not bad. Boyfriends and girlfriends are not bad. Working out's not bad. Diet is not bad. But that's not going to fill the hole in your life. God's going to fill the hole in your life. So those things, they all come up short. And so those things, you're just simply not, it's not true. You were created with a hole shaped like God. You were created with a need for God. You were created with an innate desire inside of you that is desperate to call out to God, its creator. And if you're not doing that, you're coming up empty. You're coming up short. But when you recognize that you don't have the power, that you can't handle everything, ladies and gentlemen, that's when you've positioned yourself to experience the power of God. And you realize, I can't do this, God. I need you. I've got to call out to you. I need you to rescue me. The Apostle Paul was a lot like this. He lived this. If you read his writings and you read his stories and you do any study about Apostle Paul, he lived this, and a lot of people in this that will listen to this, they're living it as well. We read in Corinthians, he talks to the Corinthians again about a thorn in his flesh. There's a thorn in my flesh, and it says that he talks to to it, and he says, it has plagued my life. It has caused me trouble. I want this to go away. I want to get rid of it. I don't have what it takes to hold on to this. I need this to get out of my life. It's a thorn. I don't need it. It said, we read about it, and he begged God to take it from him. It said on 3 different occasions, he asked God, will you take this away from me? And when people think, well, he just asked 3 times, that doesn't seem very, very desperate. But what you need to understand, it wasn't just 3 times, it was 3 different seasons of his life he went into saying, God, you've got to take this from me. 3 different seasons where he was seeking, he was begging, he was pleading, he was fasting, he was praying, he was asking his prayer partners to pray with me that God would take this from me. It's too much, I can't handle this. 3 different seasons. I've got an acquaintance of mine, a friend of mine, a guy I went to high school with that I know, his name's Chad. And a few years ago, he was diagnosed with cancer. He's 1 year younger than me. He was diagnosed with cancer, and we, as a group of guys, we prayed and come together, and he seemed to have beat it. But during that, he was crying out to God. He was doing everything he could do, cry out to God, God, take this from me. He seemed to have beat it, but it came back. Same thing, pray for me. I need Jesus. I need God. God, take this from me. I can't handle this. This is more than I can bear. He seemed to have beat it. A 3rd time, it came back, and he's going through the 3rd time right now. And he's praying, God, take this from me. I can't handle this. I can't, it's more than I can handle. It's 3 different seasons of his life. He went through months and months of trying to get past it through therapy and work and radiation and chemo and all that. And he made it past it, and he's living life. And all of a sudden it hits him again, and he goes months through it again, and he's living life. And here we go, a 3rd time, seasons. A whole season of begging and pleading and seeking and asking. And so that's where Paul finds himself. He's in that side of a situation. And it's like, God, I know you can take this. I know you can handle this. I know you can take this from me. So God, why would you allow this in my life? Why would you allow this? This is more than I can handle. Why would this happen? Why don't you just fix this, God? Why won't you just take this from me? A lot of you, you're here this morning, you're like that. You're like, God, there's something, this is going on in my life. It's just too much. It's not, I can't handle this. And when you're living in a sin-filled world that we live in, you're going to find yourself with a thorn in your flesh. You're going to find yourself with a thorn in your side that just won't go away. And you're going to find yourself calling out to God, God, please remove this from my life. It's more than I can handle. God, I know you have the power to answer my prayer. Can you please take this away? God, can you take this depression away from me? It's more than I can handle. God, can you take this? My children are having sicknesses. Can you take these sicknesses away? Someone here this morning, actually, I know for a fact, God, can you just take these headaches away? I need you. This is more than I can handle. God, I need you to call. I need your help. I need this. God, can you fix my marriage because I can't fix it? This is more than I can handle. God, can you turn my teen back to you because it's more, he's more than I can handle. She's more than I can handle. Can you turn their hearts back to you, God? I know you're able. I know you can do this. God, can I just get 1 month that I can get ahead in my finances and I won't be behind? Can you do that? I know you're able. I know you're capable. I know you can do that, God. God, can you just do this one thing for me? I know you can. Why don't you just fix it? And this is exactly where Paul finds himself. God, I know you're able to take this from me. God, will you please take it from me? And God turns to Paul and he speaks to him like this and he says this, because Paul's saying, why don't you do this? And God says this. Here's his answer to him in 2 Corinthians 12. But God said to me, he says, my grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in your weakness. My power is made perfect in your weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me. This is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in my weaknesses. Paul's writing this now. For Christ's sake, I delight in my weaknesses, in my insults, in the weaknesses that I have, the frailties that I have, the times that I can't handle this. I delight in those things. In the insults, when I go to a place and I present the gospel of Jesus Christ and they don't accept it, they insult me, I delight in that. In my hardships, when I don't have enough to make it, I don't have the resource to do it, I don't have this, I don't have the strength to accomplish it, I delight in those things. In the persecutions, and Lord knows in that time there were persecutions. People were throwing rocks at people until they died. I mean, that's a persecution. People were cursing. They were hanging you on crosses. They were burning you at the stake. They're cutting people's heads off because of the name of Christ. He said, I will rejoice in that. I will delight in those things. In all the difficulties that life gives me, in all the difficult places you send me, in all the difficult situations I find myself, I will delight in that for your name's sake. For when I am weak, then I am made strong. Then I'm made strong. I want you to say that with me. When I am weak, then I am strong. When I am weak, then I am. Paul says it this way, I'm going to delight in the hard stuff. I will delight in the hard stuff because that's what it takes to get me to the place where I understand I can't handle this. I'm going to have to give it to somebody bigger than me to handle it. I'm going to have to rely on someone else's power to handle this. I have to tap into the power that goes beyond my human ability, my human capability, my ability to understand, my ability to accomplish. I'm going to have to tap into the supernatural, wonder-working power of God. I'm going to have to allow Him to do this thing. Listen, the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in me. The same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead, for those of you who know Christ, who accept Him as your Lord and Savior, live in Him, work in Him, work through Him, He works through you, man, the same power lives in you. When I'm weak, then I'm strong. There are days that I personally, physically can't do the things that God's called me to do. Injury, tired, dilapidated. Wow, what a word. I just can't physically do it, God. There are days when mentally I can't wrap my mind around what God wants me to do, what I feel like needs to be accomplished. Mentally, I just can't see my way out of this thing. There are days when if I'm honest, spiritually, I don't feel it sometimes. God, I'm going to need you to come in and do this because spiritually, I'm not feeling it. There's Sunday mornings when I get here and it takes me to about the second, third, sometimes the last line of the third or fourth song to even feel it. And I'm the pastor. Because sometimes I'll let the weights of the world and the things of this world and the weight of the ministry just weigh down on me. And it's not until I let go and say, well, that's God, it's not me, it's you. When I'm made weak, now I'm strong because I've allowed you to take this thing. There are times in my life, all those things, and then I have to realize, listen, for when I am weak, I understand. Now I'm strong. But why am I strong? Because He's strong. And He's operating through me. I am who I am because He tells me, all that stuff. Yeah, I am who I am because He is. He's strong. He's powerful. So therefore I am. It's simply let me leave you with this illustration today. Closing illustration here. It's simply the difference between rowing and sailing. Now, when we were kids, my dad he would go by a place in Charlotte. He would rent a big canoe for us. A.M. was part of this trip one time, and he would take and get us a canoe, bring it home, and he would drop us off at the bottom of Spencer Mountain in the river. Little kids. We might have been in the early teens, and I would be like 13, 14, and my brothers would be 10 and 7, and A.M. was with us one time. So if A.M. was with us, that means I was probably 16, 17. A.M. was probably, he was probably like 11. And my middle brother was like 14. Dad drops us off. We're all in a canoe. Drops us off in I guess that's the South Fork River, maybe, I don't know. Bottom of Spencer Mountain. He says, I'll pick you up in McCadville. Dad of the year. We take off, just rowing down the road. Getting places where you get stuck and you're just rowing as hard as you can, right? Get places you're rolling outside, right and left and right. And come on, we get, I'm sure we didn't have life jackets. That would be just silly. I'm pretty positive we didn't have life jackets. You remember a life jacket involved in that? I'm sure it wasn't. Life jackets for girls, But we're just rowing away, right? So I know about rowing. I don't know a lot about sailing. Hadn't been not a lot of sailboats. I've been on ships that had sails that caught the wind and it took us on a sail. And I'm not a sailor. I'm not a seller. I've sold some things, but I'm not a seller. There's a difference in sailing and rowing, right? There's a difference in what's going on. And in my life now, I'm not rowing for Christ. I'm sailing with Christ. And so let me explain it a little bit. For some of you, you're just rowing. You're rowing, and you're rowing, and you're rowing, and you're rowing, and you're rowing a little bit on the right, and you're figuring, oh, Lord, I'm rowing to the left, and I've messed up. And maybe you've even got to points where you're just rowing with both hands, and you're trying to figure it out. Row, row, row your boat, And there's no gentle streams. I don't know, merrily can go back home because it doesn't happen. These are rip-roaring rapids we're going through here. And you're rowing. And you're trying to figure this thing out. You get in this boat and you begin to row and you row and you row and you row, believing that, hey, God's not going to give me more than I can handle, so I can handle this. I've got my rowboat, I'm good. I've got my oar, I've got my boat, I'm good. I've got this. I can get there. I can get there. All I have to do is row a little bit hard on this side and row a little bit hard on that side and row over here and row over there until you realize that I'm not getting anywhere. I'm just rowing. And if I'm not careful, I'm rolling around in circles. I've seen this place before. I've seen this situation before. I've seen this circumstance before. I've seen this season before. I've rowed myself into a circle. I should have got on the other side and rowed a little bit more over there, and now I'm just working myself into this. And you realize, listen, I can't get there. I don't have the strength to get there. I don't have the ability to get there. I don't have the capability to get there. And ladies and gentlemen, I've come to tell you this morning, instead of rowing in that boat, you need to learn how to sail. You need to learn how to put the sail up. And when the good Holy Spirit comes by and blows the wind of the Spirit blows, you catch the wind and you just let it take you. You let it take you where He wants to take you. You don't force it. You don't direct it. You don't navigate it. You just go where the Spirit takes you. You let Him take you down the river of life. You learn how to lean into Him, put that sail up, and let the Spirit of God move you and direct you and guide you. And instead of trying to row and do it all by yourself, you serve a God who says, you know what, if you'll just allow me to, I'll direct your life. If you'll allow me to, I'll take you to where I want you to go. If you'll allow me to, I'll begin to put things in your life that you didn't even ask of, you can't even hold. I'll pour out blessings from you that you can't even handle or contain. That's the kind of things I like to have in my life that I can't handle. I can't handle all these blessings, God. I need to start giving them away to people. That's the kind of things I want to be a part of. That's the kind of I can't handle I want to see. And God says, listen, if you'll just let me do the work, if you'll just put the sail up, I've got this Spirit blowing through this land, through this earth, and He'll blow the sails. We serve this God who says, I can get it done. I can get it done through you. Because when I'm weak, ladies and gentlemen, He's strong. He's strong. So when I'm weak, therefore I'm strong because I've allowed Him to be strong in me. I don't know who's here this morning hurting today, but I pray that this ministers to you, that you get to the place where you know that I know Him better in the valley than I ever do on the mountain, that I experience His power better there, that when I am weak, I understand that I surrender to Him, therefore He is strong, and I walk in this thing, and I walk through this thing, and I walk out of this thing. I remember I was talking to someone yesterday. A lady said, hey, you preached my uncle's funeral. I said, who's your uncle? He said, Racine. I said, Racine Claude Crane. He said, you said something at the graveside. I liked what you said up there at the church, but you said something at the graveside that really has ministered to me. The other pastor that was with us that day, he read the 23rd Psalm. His wife sang a song, and they turned it over to me to prayer, and I said, let me just say this about that 23rd Psalm. He says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. I said, ladies and gentlemen, let me point you to one word in that what I just read. Yea, though I walk through the valley. I'm not camping in the valley. I'm not setting up residence in the valley. I'm not staying in the valley. I'm not building I'm not going to ask my friends to come and hang out in the valley. I'm walking just plainly through the valley. And He's walking through it with me. She said, that's ministered to me. And I hope that will minister to you this morning, that where you are in that valley, you're not there to stay. God hasn't called you to set up residence there. You're walking through the valley, and He's walking through it with you. It's not yours to handle. Stop trying to hold on. Stop trying to give everything you've got to hold on to this thing that's put in your life because you think that if you hold on to it, that you can beat it. It's not yours to beat. It's not yours to hold on to. You were not created to hold on to these things. You were created to give them to God. You were created to need Christ. Ladies and gentlemen, He will allow you to have more than you can handle in your life. Why? So you can experience His presence. So you can experience His power. So you can get to a place where you'll call out to Him and you'll realize there's something outside of yourself that you need inside of yourself that you've got to call out to, and you've got to do that. I think of things we've gone through in our life, and I think of things that I know people in the church have gone through, and I think of things that man, that was so much more than we can handle. When April and I signed up to be foster parents and decided to adopt, they got to a place where this is more than we can handle. This is way bigger than we thought this was going to be, God. This is more than I can handle. When our children became teenagers, we were like, hey, God, I don't know if you called me to raise a teenager, but I'm going to need you. I need your help. These kids have lost their minds. If something happens, they're from 12, then they're 13, a switch gets flipped, and they're like, oh, my Lord. You're calling priests for demon possession. Hey, what's going on here? We need an exorcism. This is more than I can handle. When you say, hey, I'm going to get involved in ministry, are you serious? This is more than I can handle, God. I thought this was going to be good. I thought I heard your voice. He said, you did. I've called you to something bigger than you. This is going to be so much bigger than you. I've told the story before. When we decided, hey, we're going to plant a church. We're going to start a church. We're going to get in a minute to be a pastor. And I was like, the one thing we know how to do is youth ministry. We'll knock that out. We go start a church. We ain't got no teenagers in the church. All young families with little kids. Okay, God, the only thing I know how to do, we don't have any of that. So now what? Well, good. I've got you to where I want you at. Now we can use you. Get your hands off of it and let me take care of this. Stop rowing the boat and let me show you how to sail this thing. Listen, men, when you married that woman, you've realized she's more than you can handle. Women, when you married that man, you realize, hey, he's more than I can handle. I ain't figured him out. Listen, there is no manual to figure out women. There's no manual to figure out men. Men, we understand each other. Women, y'all understand each other. We'll just leave it at that. It's just more than we can handle. God, I'm going to need your help. April and I, on August 7th of this year, are going to celebrate 30 years of marriage. Somebody asked me at work this week, I think Aaron was sitting there, he said, hey, well, let me ask you this, is your marriage the same as it? Oh, thank you, yeah. All right. That's for you, honey. You did it, you survived. Everybody, she needs a t-shirt. Survivor, champion of the world. He said, is your marriage just like it was when you got married? I said, in 1993? No, not at all. We're different people. We've gone through different times. We've gone through different worlds. Our circumstances are different. I even told the men this week, April and I were married for 8-9 years before we ever had children. We did our own thing. We were sitting at the house at night, and it was late, and we saw a commercial that said, I want my baby back, baby back, baby back. I want my baby back, baby back, baby back. Chili's, baby back. We'd say, you want to go to Chili's? Yeah, let's go. 10 o'clock at night? Sure, let's do it. Got no kids. Nobody's got bedtimes here. We're adults. We're on our own. We do what we want to do. But then we had children, and all of a sudden, now they got to go to bed. Now they got to be changed, and they got to be fed. And life changes, right? And then they grow up, and they become teenagers, and they lose their mind, and everything else changes again. And then they even get older, and they're talking about moving and doing things and living their life. And today's Dylan's 23rd birthday. I don't know. That means I'm at least 23 years old. And he's got all these different things, and he's telling me today, he said, Dad, let me tell you the lifetime of the life plan of my life. Here's what's going to happen. Here's when it's going to happen. I love the fact that he's got plans. He knows what's going to happen. Him and Maggie, this is what's going to happen this day, that day, next week, and this week. Hey, that's great. That's awesome. Thanks for letting me know. That means that my life's going to change again. My life's going to get different again. And I'm going to have to change with it. I can't row like I used to row. I'm going to have to just sail, let God take care of this thing. I'm going to have to let God, there's things, it's more than I can handle. Listen, here's the reason that's more than I can handle. I wasn't created to handle it. I was created to lean in on God and not on my own understanding. I was created to lean in on His power and not my power. It's not by might nor by power, but it's by His Spirit, says the Lord, that I'm going to be able to do this. Instead of saying that I've got to get stronger so I can do this. I've got to be strong because God's never going to give me more than I can handle. Instead of saying all of that I have to be strong. Some of us need to learn how to say, I need to become weaker so He can become stronger. I must become less so He must become more. I've got to get out of His way. I've been trying to pilot this thing for way too long. I've been trying to direct the path of my life, direct the path of my family for way too long, when God said, if you'll just let me do it, I'll take care of this. Get your hands off of it. Remember when everybody used to have the God is my co-pilot tag on the front of the car? Dumb. You're in the wrong seat. Get in the back seat and just let him drive. Forget even trying to co-pilot. Go, but God, take a right. So it's much easier to ride if you'll go take a right there. He says, listen, who's driving? I said this before, I've said it again, and I will say it over and over. God has a problem. He thinks he's God. And here's the deal. He is. And he sees the end before we even get into the beginning. So don't question where he's got you. Don't question what he's put in you and put you through and allowed you to go through. Because trust me, he's still in charge of this. He's still God. He's still standing up as, you know what? If he'll just follow me, it's going to look ugly down that street. And it's going to look like a dead end over there, but if they'll take that turn like I've told them to and like I'm prompting them to, they're going to end up over here in the place that I really want them to be. But I can't tell you, I could stay here and talk till next Sunday about stories of where I've failed and of where I've tried to push my way and do my thing. And God said, you know what? Let me redirect this thing. And he's got me to a place where I know I need his presence. He's got me to a place where I know I've got to call on him. He's got me to a place where I know I've got to have his power to do these things. Why would God allow me to do these things? Why would he allow me to handle these things? Why would he allow this thing to come into my life? It's because God wants me to draw close to him so he can draw close to me. Draw close to him. I heard one preacher say it this way. He said, every Sunday morning right before I get up to preach, he said, it's become my habit to just take one step forward. He said, God, that's all I can do. I'm going to need you to do the rest. He said he sits there and he listens to the worship. He knows it's about to wrap, and he goes, all right, God, I've done all I can do. It's with you now. And he said, I've done that for the last 30 to 40 years of my ministry, and he's never failed me. He's always puts his hands out and lets me take the next step and the next step and the next step and the next step. Reveals his presence to me over and over. Reveals his supernatural power to me over and over. Why? Because his power is made powerful in my weakness. I want to ask you to come to the music this morning. I'm going to lead you with this last verse. Romans chapter 8, verse 26. This is Paul writing again. He says, in the same way the Spirit helps us in our weakness. And that's verse 26. Skip down to verse 28. And he says, and we know that in all things God works for good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. In the same way the Spirit helps us in our weaknesses. Whatever it is that you're going through, as long as you're going through it with God, God says, I'll work it out. I'll work it out for those who are following me, trusting in me, leaning in on me, and are called according to my purpose. And you're like, well, I don't know if I'm called or not. Listen, you're all called to be children of God. You're all called to be his child. He's called you to a place that's bigger than you. He's called you to a place that you know you've got to need him. I have a brother who's an alcoholic, who's been in and out of AA, and he still goes to meetings and all the time. Once an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic, is what he tells me. And he goes through meetings. And AA doesn't call it God. They don't call it Jesus. They call out to a power that's bigger than them, to beat this thing that's bigger than them. And he says, Chad, I know when I go to these meetings, I know who that power is. I know what that power is because I was raised in the church, and I've experienced his presence. I've experienced his power, and I've tried to do it on my own. And I've tried to beat this on my own. And I've tried to conquer this on my own. And I've tried to make better decisions and hang around with better people and take better paths and make better plans. And in the end, I always fail miserably because it's just me trying to do these things. I can remember growing up in the church and hearing these songs, are you washed in the blood, in the precious blood of the Lamb? Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? I was like, I'm not. I got grass stains on everything I own. Every pair of jeans I have holes in them because I've tore them up, because I'm too rough. God, forgive me. I thought I had to try better. I thought I had to try harder. I thought if I'd go to church every time the doors opened that it would work. But that's not what he called me to. He didn't call me to. I mean, it's crazy. I'm all about church attendance. You know that. But that's not all he's called me to. He called me to get there, but then he called me to get into this. And I've even tried this before. I've tried to lay it on the table and just say, man, God, that's osmosis, Lord. In the name of Jesus, just soak into me, God. Like you do your history books when you're about to fall asleep at night and you got a test the next day. God, just let this settle in on me, God. Please, thank you, Lord. Amen. Just touch me, Lord. Just let it fall all over me. Listen, I missed it growing up. I thought it was all about me trying harder and doing everything that they told me to do and not doing everything they told me not to do. And then it took me a long time later on until I realized that God wanted a relationship with me. That He wanted me to walk with Him and to talk with Him and let Him walk with me and talk with me and pour into me. And me just get out of His way and let Him lead me and guide me and direct me. And I had to learn how to put the oars down and let Him sail me out, not row anymore, not try to God, no, hold on, direct this. No, I'm going to go over here. Oh, I got this. He says, just put that down. I got this, man. Just leave me alone. And I've got to the place where I've got now where I realize if I would not have put the oar down, I would have wrecked a long time ago. My canoe of life would have been jacked up, man. My kayak would have turned over and I would have drowned. But now He's got me to a place, look, and I told you, I had you all the time. And this thing you're facing right now, I got that too. This thing that's just too big for you to handle now, this thing that you don't understand right now, I've got this. You've now come out of this storm. You're about to go into this new storm. I'm here too. Here's the thing. Most of us dread tomorrow because it's Monday. Guess who's already there? God. For whatever this week is to come, God's already there saying, I'm taking care of these things already. I've already made plans for you. Plans that you would prosper. Plans for hope and a future. If you'll just lean in on me. I want to ask you to stand with me this morning. Some of you here today believe that God will not give you more than you can handle, and therefore you're doubting God, and you're saying, God, you must not be what I thought you were, because in my life right now, I have more than I can handle. Because you've bought into the misbelief, the misconception, the wrong thought process, the wrong social construction that God's not going to give you more than you can handle. When I told you story after story and life after life in and out of the church, God literally allows you to have more than you can handle. Why? So you can say, God, I need you to take this. I can't handle this. I need your presence. I need your power. That's the only way I'm going to make it through it. So if you're here this morning and you're trying to do it all on your own, can I tell you, you're going to be tired. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to be discouraged. You're going to be depressed. You're going to want to quit. You're going to want to throw in the towel, because you were not designed to handle it. You were designed to give it to God. So if you're here this morning and there's something in your life that's too overwhelming for you, it's too heavy for you to carry, I'm going to pray. They're going to sing, and I'm going to ask you to take that heavy weight and bring it to the altar. I didn't ask April, but they brought the altars out, and they're here. I want you to bring them to the altar. Cast your cares upon the Lord, because what? He cares for you. Take your burdens to the Lord and leave them there. Don't bag them back up and take them back to your house. Leave them at His feet. God, we thank you this morning. We thank you for your presence. We thank you for your power. I personally have experienced both this morning. I hope everyone in this room has, but if they haven't, God, this is their great opportunity. God, there are people in this room that are trying to carry the things of this world. They're overwhelmed, they're exhausted, they're annoyed, they're aggravated, they're discouraged, they're depressed. All these words that don't fit in the relationship with you. God, they're trying to row their way through this world, through this life, when all you said, if we would just let our sail up, that you would let the Holy Spirit blow through this place and direct us and guide us. So God, I ask you to reveal yourself to us this morning, every man, woman, boy, and girl in this room, that if there's something in our life that was just too much for us, God, that we would have the courage to hand it over to you. Let's do it this way this morning. I want to ask you, as every eye is closed, every head is bowed, if you're here this morning, you say, that's me, Chad, that's me. I've got something in my, it's just too heavy. I cannot handle this. Would you slip your hand up? Just say, that's me, that's me, that's me. Every section so far that I can see, someone has raised their hand and said, that's me. Listen, it's not your job to handle it. Let me tell you again, it's not your job to handle it. It's your job to give it to God and let Him handle it. He's bigger than what you're doing. He's bigger than what you're going through. He's bigger than what you'll ever face. So God, we come to you this morning and we ask you in the mighty name of Jesus